Hello and welcome to another episode of The Perfect Place to Put a Practice podcast. I'm your host, Mike Green from Dr. Demographics. And today we're going to talk about something that is vitally important for your practice, for the success, the long-term success of your practice, and that is demographic marketing. And more specifically, how to use demographic data to create a winning strategy for your practice. That's super near and dear to my heart. I am a marketer of 30 years and a demographic marketer the last 15 here with Dr. Demographics. So many valuable conversations, and when I say valuable, I'm meaning the practice owner has the light bulb is turned on how they can use the demographic data for their own personal success in their practice. So many examples that I can think of over the years that have made just a massive impact and have really been the difference between sometimes a failing practice and a successful practice, sometimes a practice just going from good to great. But it's important to me that you, our podcast listeners, our great friends and clients, that you are able to use this demographic data in your strategy to be as successful as you can possibly be. And so that's what today's episode is about. We're going to go over a lot of great things for you to implement immediately and a few case studies that will be valuable for you as well. Now, one quick note before we dive in. Those of you that are listening to the podcast on your way to work, thank you so much for listening to it. I hope you are getting a value out of this content. For those of you that want to take it to the next level, there is a video version of this podcast where you get to see my beautiful shining face, smiling face. And it's found in a couple places. The best place for you to go would be just on our website. Just click on the podcast tab, which goes to drdemographics.com/podcast. And there you'll see a list of all of our episodes. We've revamped that page so it's a little easier to navigate. We've added our podcast back to about the beginning of 2023. We have probably another 200 episodes still to add. A lot of great episodes with Scott McDonald and some that we've done together, some marketing, some practice location specific. We're going to add all those as the time comes, but we've got the last couple years at least on that page. And so you can watch that video right there, the best place to find it. If you're finding us on YouTube, just note that we have changed our YouTube channel from the regular Dr. Demographics channel to a new channel called Dr. Demographics Live. And there's some internal reasons why we've done that, but we're going to leave the other one up for sure, but we'll be putting these new podcast episodes on the Dr. Demographics Live YouTube channel. So if you want to follow us there, you're welcome to do that. Please like and subscribe to that channel. It will help out a tremendous amount. And with all of that being said, let's dive into demographic marketing, how you can use demographics for demographic data for a winning strategy for your practice. Now, if you have talked to me before and we've talked about marketing, I use this quote often, and I felt a little funny putting my own name under this because I'm pretty sure I came up with it. If I didn't, I'm sorry to whoever the author is of this quote, but it's so important, especially to dentists and doctors, and that is hope is not a marketing strategy. And the reason that I have said that for so many years, I was sitting in a doctor's office doing a on-site consultation, which is something that we're going to start offering again in 2025. I was sitting in a doctor's office in the state of Washington. I'll just be that specific. And I was with him and his staff pretty well the whole day. And they had called us out of absolute desperation to do an on-site consultation with them to help them figure some things out, demographically, marketing, otherwise. And I sat with them for hours and hours and hours. Nobody came in. The phone didn't ring, nothing. And I pointed that out to them. I said, hey, are you guys just closed today? Or it was like a Thursday, so it wasn't really a typical day to be closed. And they're like, no, we're open. We just don't have anybody on the schedule. And I said, okay, well, that's awesome. You blocked out the schedule just for me to visit with you. And he's like, no, we just didn't have anyone scheduled. And I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. I'm like, how are you staying open if you've got full days that you don't have anybody on the schedule? And I couldn't believe it. And I saw the look in the doctor's face, and and I could tell pretty quickly that the house was on fire, and it was maybe past the point of where he could save it. Although I'm pleased to say that he did implement some of the things that we shared with him demographically, and they're doing much better today. However, they had told me about a direct mail campaign that they had just recently done, and they had sent out, and it was supposed to have hit the day before or today. And I could just see them just hoping and praying that phone would ring. And as I sat there with them, this popped into my head is that, man, hope is not a marketing strategy. Hope is not, if you're counting on hope, man, I hope this campaign works. I hope this postcard works. I hope this direct mail piece works. I hope this Facebook ad works. I hope this new treatment works. Whatever it is, that's not a marketing strategy. That's marketing laziness, really. And I get it. Like, that's, where a lot of people have to start if they don't have any data. And hopefully that's the problem we're going to solve for you, is that you'll have data, so you're not basing things on hope. Marketing is a scientific process. Marketing is something that you should be doing and approaching in a scientific method kind of way. It does take some time, and it does take a little trial and error, but on the outside of that, man, you understand who your client or patient is. You understand them at a level that you're able to speak to them and what's important to them, what they value, and you're no longer relying on hope, because you have some predictable outcomes that are going to happen every time you put a marketing plan in place. I always say you've got to get to the point where you're putting in a nickel and you're getting back a dime. And if you're not to that stage, or you have no idea if you're at that stage, then hopefully today will be a good start for you, that you can evaluate your current marketing plan that you've got in place for your practice and start implementing some of these things. So let's dive in, but please, if I was a tattoo person, I would tattoo that on my forehead. Hope is not a marketing strategy. Okay, so let's look at the difference, and we talk a lot about demographics. We talk a lot about psychographics at Dr. Demographics. And so so you're very, very clear on what the difference is between the two. Demographics are measurable, quantifiable data, and so it's age, race, gender, income, education level, household data, geographic location. All of those things are, and I think what we typically think of when we think of demographics, and it can go deeper in that. It can go to spending patterns and maybe household dynamics, where maybe you have grandma and grandpa living with you, plus little kids, and there's lots of different variables there. But most of our clients understand demographics. A good example of demographics would be someone that approaches a marketing problem of saying, hey, I'm going to target women that are 25 to 35 years old, that are married with children and have a college degree. Okay, that's great. That's some really good qualifiers, and certainly much better than I'm just going to throw out a campaign that's a wide net, that's going to, anybody that sees it, hopefully they'll respond to me again. There's that word hope. No, I'm going to be a little bit more specific. I'm targeting a gender, an age range, a marital status, and an education level. I think that is a fantastic example of a very common demographic marketing situation that probably a lot of your marketing directors are probably looking at as far as setting up a campaign. On the psychographic side, much, much different. That's qualitative data. Okay, so your internal motivations, what you value, what you're very opinionated about, maybe the lifestyle choices that you're making. I always use an example of what's the line in the sand that you will absolutely not cross, right? That's all qualitative things. Those are things that maybe if they're if someone is in one of those categories, that may qualify them for whatever campaign that you're running. So a good example would be, I'm going to target really health-conscious women who are prioritize spending money on their children before themselves. And so what do we see with that? We still see some demographic data, right? We're still seeing women and women with families and children. But when you add psychographic data, now we're targeting someone who has a lifestyle pattern of being health conscious. We're looking at somebody who has a value of where they spend their money. Okay, so that's a very, very different qualitative scenario or equation that you can utilize to your marketing. Now, in almost every cases, in almost every case, there is no psychographic data in marketing plans that we see with most doctors. It's at the best demographic and usually just a wide net, right? Most marketers, they have a hammer, and so every problem they see is a nail, and so they just use that same hammer with every single thing. That's not the way to do it, and that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're going to talk about demographics, so that quantifiable data specifically. Next week we'll talk about psychographics, which is really the magic there, but it's a good combination of the two. But I wanted you to understand the difference between demographics and psychographics, because we get that question a lot. And partially because we include both on our reports that we provide at Dr. Demographics, both demographic and psychographic data. So let's look at 4 key areas to understand when it comes to demographics, their impact on your marketing plan that you're deploying in your practice. So first, we want to look at age and life stage, right? Are they in a pediatric situation where they've got lots of little kids, or are they in a situation where they have growing children? A lot of times we see families that are kind of in that move up stage where, yeah, they have a few kids, but they also have some kids in middle school, high school, maybe a few even moving on. Are they at a stage where they're empty nesters, right? And all of a sudden they have a lot more money that they can spend on themselves, whereas they've been spending it on the family, and now they're willing to go down a cosmetic route. Now they want to buy that new smile. They want to do the Botox. They want to have the designer pet. Like, there's all of those things that could come into play when you have a family at a particular life stage. Or are they at a geriatric stage, right? A whole new set of challenges and opportunities you as a provider that you have, depending on what stage of life they're in, and certainly much different at a geriatric stage than what they are when you're at a pediatric stage. Second thing to be considering would be income and insurance trends. Are these going to be cash pay patients, or is this a really insurance-heavy market? One of the things that we can utilize with that is looking at their job status. Is this a heavy white-collar area that are very large employers that are going to have really great benefit packages, or is this a heavy blue-collar area? And don't associate necessarily income to those two segments, because a lot of times in many of the best places in the country to practice, the blue-collar ones are the ones that are making far more money. Those are the ones that have the money to spend on some of those higher dollar treatments. Why? Because they're business owners. They're your electricians, your plumbers, your construction, your framers. Some of these areas that are growing have a lot of great, strong blue collar people that are making the most money in the area. Or are you in an area like DC, right? That's a good example of heavy white collar and very affluent white collar. And so there's so many factors, which is why it's so important for you to understand what the variables are for your particular area before you set up a strategy. Third thing to really consider is what are the geographic locations or barriers that are relevant for the people that I'm trying to market to. Are they all clustered up into one group, or is it an area that has all of the, maybe more of a rural area where you have the Walmart and the Dollar General and that kind of thing right downtown, but all of the population is just spread out into these smaller areas? Or are you in a New York or a New Jersey or a Pennsylvania or a California where you have certain cultural segments that are very dominant in certain neighborhoods? And so you have a Korean district, and you have a different areas that are a cultural based. And so how does that play into your marketing? Are you, with the Korean example, are you a Korean doctor? And so you want to speak to the Korean families that are living in a particular area? Well, if you can start answering some of those questions, it helps you tailor fit your marketing plan so that you're reaching the people that you want to reach. And that really is one of the final considerations that we'll talk about, was that cultural and language factors when it comes to demographics. Do you have an area that has a high Hispanic population? If so, you probably ought to have somebody that speaks Spanish at your office. You probably need to have somebody, especially at your front desk, that can deal with billing issues and explain insurance and explain some of those things in the dominant language that's going to be there. And so is that a challenge? Absolutely it is. But it's one that if you can nail that, it will really put you in a great position as a practice owner to speak really, really well to that particular neighborhood and community. And a lot of times where you have an area, and California is a perfect example, where you have really dominant cultural differences within the same geographic area. Man, if you can nail it with a few of the people in that neighborhood, you'll have a steady stream of new patients that look like them, talk like them, are their neighbors, that are going to be great patients for you down the road. So all things you've got to consider, and kind of different when it comes to demographics, because if you can really nail those age and life stage, income, insurance trends, geographic location and barriers, and the culture and the language, boy, you can really be in a great position to set up a really strong marketing plan and campaign that's going to speak well to that particular community. Now, how do you collect that demographic data? What is the source that you go to? And now, data is data, and we always tell people this. I mean, you can certainly go online and find all kinds of data. So a lot of it's outdated, and some of it's going to be from the census years ago. There's going to be a lot of different areas that you can collect data from. Your real estate person probably has some data. There's lots of free information out there, absolutely. Obviously, we exist but to give data, and we not only give data, but we give you the analysis and help you know what the data means. And so at Dr. Demographics, we have specifically, I would say, the site viability report and the marketing report that are specific to give data on a very specific location. So if you have, if you're a current practice owner and you're having trouble answering some of these questions demographically and psychographically, you probably ought to get a site viability report or get a marketing report. If you're in a situation where you're looking to purchase a practice and drop a tremendous amount of money on this practice, you probably ought to know the data. And I would not trust the data that you're getting from the existing doctor all the time. A lot of times it's good to have a good, verifiable and third-party source that can give you some data that's not driven by a commission, that's not trying to just get the deal done so they can cash a check, but it can really give you the important data and can tell you the good news and the bad news. And that's why we exist here at Dr. Demographics, specifically with the site viability report and marketing report. Other ways, if you're a current practice owner, you're looking at your current patient data. How's your intake form? Your intake form should be collecting quite a bit of data, demographic data about your patients, and more than just the intake form, but how are you able to analyze that data? Does your practice software collect it and then spit out a report for you? A lot of them do, and so that's something that you should definitely be considering and making sure that you've got the right fields and the right questions that you're asking of your current patients that are coming in. Now, if you're in a situation where you have lots of patients, but you haven't done a really good job collecting that data, a lot of times you can do a survey. A survey can really tell you quite a bit about your existing patients. Make it quick, make it easy. We've got some great methods to be able to send those out. Do a patient survey that can give you some quick, immediate data on your existing patients. And then, the last one I would say would be time-based trends. Like how is your demographics changing over time? Meaning that if you purchased your practice in 2011, and now we're sitting at 2025, chances are things have changed quite a bit in that period of time, that 14, 15 years, and probably is to the point where you need to start looking at some new data for your practice. We usually recommend once every probably about 2 or 3 years, you really should get a new viability report on your practice so that you can stay up on what the trends are for your practice and where it's going and what it's doing. Okay, how do you apply it? How do you apply this demographic data that you get to your marketing? Now, this is a much longer discussion, obviously, than what we'll do on this podcast. But specifically, I would say that there's three main categories of how you're going to apply the demographic data. First, I would say in your branding and your messaging positioning. Is this high end or low end or both, right? Is your market, do you have segments that are high end and segments that are low end? You certainly wouldn't want to position the same message in both of those markets, right? Like, you want to make sure that your campaign or your marketing message is specific to those two different groups. High tech or low tech, that's another thing that we see very, very often is the demographics in your area, are they a tech savvy group, or is this a low tech? Are you talking to a bunch of farmers that don't have a smartphone or doing everything they can to stay away from technology? You're going to market to them very, very differently. And so you've got to be able to answer that pretty specifically for the patient group or potential patient group that you're going to advertise to. Secondly, would be your strategy, your actual advertising strategy. Are digital ads the way to go? Do you need to be on Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads? Is that what's going to really reach your market, or are you in an area that's more traditional? Right? They're still watching the evening news, and they're still getting magazines and those kind of things. Like, is that the way that you need to be reaching your people? Again, you don't have the ability to change, in most cases, how people consume their media. And so, A, you need to answer, where are they at? And then 2, how can I get there? How can I be in the place they already are? And so that is a whole lot less expensive than trying to convince them to come to a new place that they're not used to being. Local events, sponsorships, that might be a way for you to go. There's a great doctor that we did an on-site visit with a year or two ago in, I believe he was in Charlotte, North Carolina, if I remember right. And man, he was an orthodontist, and he was dominating all of the high schools. He was the football team mouth guard guy. And man, he had just created this great reputation. The kids loved him. And guess what? They showed up to have their braces done from this doctor. So great example of a doctor that understood his market well enough and put in the time and the effort and knew exactly how to advertise to that particular group. Thirdly, referral strategies. You've got to understand in your area what are going to be the right referral strategies that you're going to go after with your advertising. Are you advertising to other professionals? Are you a specialist in your field, and so you've got to go after the general practitioners because they're going to be the ones that are bringing you their market? Or are you more of a direct-to-market type of a practice? And if so, how are you going to go directly to the market? Usually it's a combination of a little bit of both those things, but depending on the type of a practice that you are, you've got to really understand where your market's coming from. So the last thing would be adjusting services and patient experience depending on what you find out with your demographics. That could be, and probably the most obvious one, is your hour strategy, right? If you're in an area that is not going to be where people work and you're targeting working adults, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to close at 5 o'clock because they're not going to be there, right? If you might have to change your hour strategy a little bit. Are you in an area that has a lot of tourists? You might need to put an emergency contingent on your schedule so that you have an opportunity to capture some of those appointments. Again, these are just random examples. It's going to be very specific to your area. And like we talked about before, you need to have multilingual support likely if you're in an area that has dominated or has a large segment that are of population that's speaking something other than English. And so, or maybe you speak something other than English and your English struggles. And so you've got to have a really good communicator on your staff so that they know exactly where they are, what they need to do, and how they can be successful. So a couple quick case studies of doctors that we've worked with over the years that just were off the top of my head that I remember that had done really well making the change. So First one I thought of was a doctor in Nashville, Tennessee, and great doctor, great practice. And we did a demographic report for them. This was another on-site report that we did. I flew out there, spent the day with him and his staff, and they were really focused. All their marketing was on cosmetics, but they were in a really high Medicaid area. And the hard truth for them was that there just wasn't enough potential production doing cosmetics, and the market was really in Medicaid because that's who the people were. And so I told him, I sat him down and I said, hey, you've got two choices. You can you can stay with your cosmetics, but you might need to move. You might need to go to a different location that's going to be better accessed by people that are going to match that market. Or you can embrace Medicaid, right? And you can make a successful practice with those patients. And he chose the latter. He chose to embrace the Medicaid patient, and he's done extremely well. Was not what he necessarily wanted to do, but the cost analysis for him to move his practice was too much. And so he embraced who the people were, and his production skyrocketed, and he ended up making a lot more money. He just had to adjust his mindset so his target matched who the people were that were actually around him. Now, if he would have spoken with us before he bought the practice and said, hey, I absolutely want to be a cosmetic doctor and not a Medicaid doctor, it would have gone very differently, right? We would have helped him, done a best sites report or something for him, and found him a different location that would have matched what he wanted for to do for production, for match the people with what he wanted to do production wise. That didn't happen. So he embraced it. He's doing fantastic even to this day. Second one I thought of would be a great doctor in Laguna Niguel that we worked with. He had bought a practice from a doctor that had been around for ever since the Ice Age, I think, and had pretty much done things the same. Like everything looked like it was from the 1980s, and the practice was doing pretty good because he'd been around for so long and had a reputation and those kind of things. But there was a big issue with that doctor leaving, and because he was going to retire, and the new doctor coming in, because he knew the doctor coming in that had bought the practice, he knew that a lot of the reputation and market was built around that doctor that was going to retire. And so we looked at the market and we said, hey, you know what? There's actually some really great opportunities when it comes to digital marketing in that area, specifically with Google reviews, with Facebook ads, Instagram ads. And we helped him identify, and then they transitioned really from that old traditional advertising model to a digital model, and they've been extremely successful. So awesome for them. Super excited for them. Last one I thought of was a doctor that was just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, that we worked with, and this one was a really cool story, and I'll probably go more into this maybe next week when we talk about psychographics. But long story short, they were really after the socialite, the kind of like 35-year-old woman that was, on the town and going out to fancy dinners every night and living kind of living that lifestyle, which is fantastic. Problem was there wasn't any of those where they were practicing at. The area was filled with soccer moms that were driving Dodge Caravans and bringing the kids around to 50 different places. And so to help them tailor their marketing from going after the socialite to the soccer mom was extremely critical for them. And that practice changed almost overnight when they changed their marketing message, and they're doing great, and they're happy, and they're making a ton more money than they did before. So super proud of all three of these practices. Again, these are just three off the top of my head that we've worked with over the last however many years. So okay, lots to digest here. I realize I want to give you, because if you're sitting here thinking, man, I really would like to get some demographic data for my practice, but just a little nervous about pulling the trigger because of price or whatever, I want to give you, our podcast listeners, a special discount code that you can apply And I'm not releasing this anywhere else. It's only on this podcast. If you go to our website, drdemographics.com, go to the reports tab. If you're looking at a practice, you'll probably want to get the site viability report. If you're buying a practice, or if you currently own a practice, you probably want to do the marketing report. It's going to give you just a mountain of data, both demographic and psychographic and analysis, to go along with it. At checkout, use the code podcast2025, and that's podcast, so spelled out, then 2025, podcast 2025, to get that discount. That'll help you a little bit on the money side. And would love to be able to help you out doing that. So again, thank you so much for visiting with me today. Mike Green at Dr. Demographics. You can visit us on the web at drdemographics.com, or you can give us a call and we can have a quick conversation, 844-704-0499. You can talk to one of our analysts and we can, like I say, have a quick conversation about your specific situation. Or you're welcome to email me directly at mike@drdemographics.com, and that is doctor spelled out on all accounts. Thank you so much for visiting with me today. We'll see you on the next episode, where next week we're going to talk about psychographics and how to apply that to your marketing, which is really the secret sauce, in my opinion, when it comes to marketing. We'll see you next week.